This is the Jocko Underground Podcast, number 17, with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Take 2. The first take that we just did, which you all don't get to hear, Echo Charles had a coughing attack. There it is. 7 seconds deep into the podcast, he started coughing uncontrollably. He's still kind of coughing a little bit. Mm-hmm. Well, good evening. It was a good evening until you had a level 9 coughing outburst.
Good evening. We good? Good evening, Jocko.
Look how smooth that was. We're all clear. Yep. All right. What's up, everybody? Hey, so going down the rabbit hole, little rabbit hole of the psychological experiments. Listen, there's some revealing going on. And I know you like that word, revealing.
Yes.
Reveal. So the last UG, we talked about this experiment called the ASH experiment, where they took the 8 people, put them in a room. 7 of the people were actors. They would make an assessment of something, and the 7 people would give the wrong answer. And then the 8th person, who was the subject of the experiment, oftentimes they would give a wrong answer too. They just kind of fit in. Conformity, right? Conformity. Interesting stuff we can learn about ourselves, and we can learn about a team and a group. So it's stuff to pay attention to. Another experiment, I think, that gives us some good information about ourselves and about others. And I've talked about a version of this one, but I hadn't heard this particular version. There's a psychologist in the late 1960s. Name is Martin Seligman. I think that's how you say it. And he was actually looking at operant conditioning of dogs, like Pavlov's dogs, where you ring a bell and then you feed them, and eventually they get to a point where you ring a bell and they automatically start salivating. They know what's coming, right? So how do you condition animals, and then how well does that work with people? And he was doing a different experiment where he was ringing a bell, and then the floor that these dogs would be on would give them an electrical shock. I'm not going to talk about the humaneness of this experiment. It doesn't sound real humane to me to start shocking dogs, especially because I like dogs. So here we are, we're shocking dogs, but that's what happened. We're reporting on it. We're not doing it. Right. We don't support it, actually.
No.
So they're shocking these dogs. And ring a bell, shock the dog. Ring a bell, shock the dog. And eventually the dog's behavior was as if they got shocked, even if they didn't shock them. They're so used to getting shocked, getting tensed, that they would act that way even if it didn't happen. Okay, so does that experiment. And then he puts a wall, like a divider in this room, this dog room with electrical floors. But one side of the floor, the other side of the divider, there's no shocking on the floor. So now he puts those dogs in there and starts shocking them again. And they don't jump over the wall. They don't jump over the wall. The bell rings, they get shocked, they sit there and they get shocked. They don't jump, and the wall's not high. This isn't even a challenge. This is just like a very low effort escape. So what's going on? Why aren't they just trying to get out of there? So then he goes, okay, well, let me try it with some fresh dogs. So then he took fresh dogs, put them in there, and as soon as he shocked them the first time, you know what they did? They all freaking jumped over that divider. And, okay, cool, it's safe over here. So this is not something that dogs couldn't figure out. Where we're standing sucks. Maybe over there, we know it sucks here, let's go to where it doesn't suck. So what had happened was that the dogs had learned, well, the phrase that they call this is learned helplessness. You learn that there's nothing you can do about your situation. Hey, look, we're getting shocked. That's just the way the bell rings. We're going to get shocked. There's nothing we can do about it. And they lose the bigger view of the world. So that's a very interesting thing to figure out. And the way that they take that view, and again, these are views. They take this idea, and some people apply it to the way it impacts humans, right? And one of the ways it impacts humans, one of the examples that they talked about, and again, this isn't a fact. This is a hypothesis that some people believe. Some people believe that, like, clinical depression comes from a situation where people no longer feel that they can control anything that's going on around them. They don't have any more control over their fate anymore. Their perceived absence of control is what it ends up being. Mm-hmm. And then what do you do? What do you do to fix yourself? You don't do anything because you don't think that anything you can do will help your scenario. And that kind of reminded me, again, this is why this story stood out to me. It reminded me of that story that I also told on the Underground when I was in Iraq, and there was that family living in this one room house, big room, but it's one room, and they had a sewer trench, just raw on the floor sewage in between like their kitchen prep area and their dining room table. And you know, I was confused by it, and why would you not try and fix it? And I thought maybe there's some of this in effect there. Mm-hmm. Think about this. This is 2003, 2004. For generations, the Iraqi people had been beat down by this tyrannical leader, Saddam Hussein, where they had no control over their fate. And it's like just what it was is what it was. Mm. They had no will. Had no will to try and figure out how to escape the situation that they're in. Or at least, obviously, some of them. Mm. And what this boils down to also, then the other thing that stood out to me about this experiment, it's the opposite of extreme ownership, right? It's the opposite of extreme ownership. With extreme ownership, you look at a situation, you go, look, this is on me. I'm going to take control. I'm going to fix it. If you don't think that way, if you have learned helplessness, then you think there's nothing I can do about it. Nothing I can do about it. It's you know, this isn't nothing I can do about it. Mm-hmm. And that attitude can get beat into you. Mm-hmm. And it might. Look, man, life is going to put some things on you that are going to be out of your control. And sometimes you fight, you know, you're young and something happens and you fight against it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't help your outcome. And then that happens again. You don't make the football team, whatever. You try to gain weight and you can't. I'm just thinking of like things you might have faced that beat you down, right?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
But it happens to everybody, right? Oh, my parents are getting divorced. I try and help. I can't. I'm just now I wanted to live with my dad. Now I got to go live with my mom. Nothing I can do about it. My mom's not here very much. She's working all the time. I'm by myself. Nothing I can do about it. The food that I'm getting isn't good. Nothing I can do. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah, you can learn that nothing you do is going to have an impact, which is obviously bad, because this gives more meaning to the saying. What is it? Get knocked down 6 times, get up 7. Right? That's like the saying.
Yeah, it's incorrect, by the way, because you can't get up.
Yeah, you need to get knocked down 7 times to get up.
Yeah. Yes, but yes, correct.
It provides that actually is a very meaningful idea.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna get knocked down over and over and over again, and what you have to watch out for is that you don't learn that you're helpless. Mm-hmm. That's what you have to watch out for. As I read a little bit more about this later on. With neuroscience, they found out that helplessness is actually the default mode. So what you're born with is a default mode that I can't do anything. And then we learn that we can control things that are going on, but then depending on your life circumstances, you may relearn to be helpless. As opposed to some people that are like, oh, you know what? They, think of those little positive reinforcements when you take control and a positive outcome comes. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I feel pretty lucky in the fact that I felt when I would do something and take action, if I got beat, I would kind of shrug it off. And if I won, I'd be like, yeah. Right? I mean, the most absurd example of that is me saying that if I'm on a airliner and it gets blown up in the sky, that I am going to, figure out a way to assemble some kind of a parachute scenario on my way down, or I'm going to get into I'm going to do something. Yeah. I'm going to find a pool to get into that's going to have a cover on it. It's going to be, I'm going to do something, and we're going to be good. Yeah. That's absurd. Yep. That I think I have that much control over my outcome
Yeah, in a plane.
In a plane that's crashing, right? Yeah. It's kind of absurd. I think so. But it's an example, right? So it's just things that we need to watch out for. To make sure, it's something to think about for two reasons. And this is the same thing I said about the Ash experiment. There's two reasons to pay attention to this. And look, you know what? There's all these, when they do these experiments, there's all these counter experiments. There's people that debunk the experiment, and they do a bunch of things. Mm. Regardless, there's a lesson to be learned, and it's a lesson to be learned on two fronts, in my opinion. The two fronts are me and everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that I don't ever learn helplessness. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pay attention to make sure I don't learn helplessness. I want to make sure that I don't ever teach helplessness. Have you been around people that have a helpless attitude? Like they don't think that anything that they do is going to matter?
Yeah.
I have been around those kind of people.
Yeah. Don't you feel that? So when you're obviously you didn't do the experiment, but when you think about the people that you know, don't you feel that it's kind of a spectrum where some people they're just really like that, and then some people they're like that sometimes or under certain circumstances, but other times they're not or whatever. I
think there's a good balance to have. I mean, obviously, you need to. If you think you can control everything and you can't, then you turn into some kind of a psychopath. Yeah. If you think you can't control anything and you don't try, then you're turning into whatever that is. But it's not good. Mm. So I think the extremes on both of these are something to watch out for. Yeah. But I think the worst one would be, there's nothing I can do that's going to matter. Mm. Nothing I can do will impact what's going to happen in my life. That's a horrible thing. So I want to make sure I never learn that myself. I want to make sure I never teach that. And then so that's externally. I also want to be able to pay attention to other people where if I see this, I go, oh, I know what's going on. My friend doesn't think that they can have any impact. Cool. What can I do to show them? What can I do to show them, get them a win, and then reinforce the win? Right? What can I do to get them a win and reinforce the win? There's another experiment where they take rats and like put them into a tube. And basically, if a rat wins once, he's way more apt to win again against another rat. And the rat that loses is much more apt to lose again. So there's another little psychological thing. And in the book, what's that book? Outliers. Outliers. The kids that are older on the hockey team, on the soccer team, on the football team, the kids that are older, because you know how they do the age cutoff is, if you're born in whenever. So if you're born in January and you're the oldest kid, you got 11 months. That is a little excerpt of what we are doing on the Jocko Underground podcast. So if you want to continue to listen, go to jockounderground.com and subscribe. And we're doing this to mitigate our reliance on external platforms so we are not subject to their control. And we're doing it so we can give you more control, more interaction, more direct connections, better communications with us, strengthen this legion of troopers that are in the game with us. So thank you. It's jockounderground.com. It costs $8.18 a month. And if you can't afford to support us, we can still support you. Just email assistance@jockounderground.com and we'll get you taken care of. Until then, we will see you mobilized underground.